Hello, thanks for joining me tonight. My name is Linda Pauly. I am the Business Administrator for AZAEYC, and I'm glad you could join me tonight for our webinar called Becoming an HR Expert. In the interest of full disclosure, I'd like to tell you that I am not an HR expert. However, I do use the AZToolkit quite a bit and would just like to walk you through our section tonight called Becoming an HR Expert, and you can find that under Successful Program Management. So I will be sharing my screen with you so that we can visit the AZToolkit together and walk through this valuable resource that we all have. If you have any questions for this live webinar, you're welcome to use the chat box. I have that open and we'll be glancing at that now and again. So feel free to ask your questions and interrupt as needed. So this is the web platform for the Arizona Toolkit. And under Successful Program Management, you will find a plethora of resources. And this could take us a very long time to try to go through every single one of them. In fact, that's another webinar that you can access through the registry on it's called the Overview of the AZToolkit. But for tonight, we're going to focus mainly on becoming an HR expert. This section has a lot of tools and templates and various resources, and tonight we just want to walk through some of them for you. As with every section of the toolkit, you have the horizontal menu and then you have the vertical menu. So underneath the vertical menu, these are all the topics that we are going to cover tonight, and some of them will be quick and others will take a little bit of time. So we'll start right from the beginning and just work our way down. The first one, and probably the most important that we are facing, is compensation and benefits. I will say that in addition to being the business administrator for AZToolkit, my day job is as a director of an early childhood center in Chandler. And I've been doing that for 20 years now, and I've never ever had such a difficult time finding people. And while I am completely sold out on worthy wages, I understand the pain of getting everybody there. So we're going to start with compensation because it's probably what we all struggle with the most. As we scroll through compensation and benefits, the first thing that we're going to see is really an argument for why we want to pay our staff a worthy wage. Especially in this job market, we can't find people to work if we're not doing that. But how can we make sure that we're doing that fairly? And there's some articles here that are very helpful. You'll see Louise Stoney throughout this presentation. She wrote this first article about viewing compensation through a shared services lens. And if you ever have a chance to hear her speak or join any of her webinars, she is really a fascinating woman and has a lot of great ideas in terms of business practices for our industry. There's also briefs on compensation, why it matters most, and how if we were in a position within our state to advocate using some of the relief funding to increase compensation, this is how some of the states are doing it and really providing a nice blueprint. But I think most of us are a little bit afraid of this fiscal cliff that we're facing next year when a lot of the grant money runs out. But for right now, we are enjoying that, and we can be using some of that money for signing bonuses, for recruiting efforts, for retention efforts to show how much our current staff matters to us. But there's some things that I'm facing, and I wonder if you aren't as well. And that is the cost to bring on new people can throw our current employees out of balance. For example, if you needing a assistant teacher and she'll only come work for you for $16 an hour, but that's how much some of your lead teachers make. Is that fair and equitable given the workload that's there? I'd like to show you this pay scale sample as an example of how we can really see what it is through a mathematical model of how we can be ensuring an equitable pay scale based on education and years of experience. And this is tied to the Arizona Early Childhood Workforce Career Lattice. You can find more information by clicking this link here to get to that. So let's just take a quick look at the sample. Every resource that you can find will usually come down in a Office product, an Excel worksheet or a Microsoft document, and that is so that you can modify that to your own center. So what we have here is the years of experience going down the left-hand column, and this is the career lattice for the state of Arizona. So a factor of 1 would equal minimum wage, which is about to be $13.85 an hour. But as people gather years of experience, you might multiply $13.85 by 1.015. Or if they start to get more and more credits in early childhood, you can see them increase over time with their education. So any cell in here could be changed from 1.05 to maybe you want it to be 1.06, and you can just go right up into the top field and change these numbers as you see fit. Maybe a bachelor's degree isn't worth 0.02% as you're going from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. So you can adjust that as needed. But this is a way to take a look at your entire staff and take your minimum wage as a 1 and multiply it by the factor to make sure that your positions are equitable in terms of a comparison to your other employees. The other thing that this does not take into account that you can use your own good judgment on is their performance. Are they great with parents? Are they great with children? Maybe you have somebody that's just completely gifted with young children, but they don't have the college credits to go with that. So you can make those own adjustments on your own. There's also a huge push for benefits. And I think it's important for us to realize that if we can't afford to help our people get health insurance or to at least pay for that, we can afford to help them. And there is a lot of really great programs at the Affordable Care Marketplace. This is also known as Obamacare. And this link will take you right to the Obamacare page. You can see that if you want coverage to start January 1st, we want to enroll our people by December 15th. When you're here, check out this Find Local Help button. This will connect you to healthcare navigators that are in the state, and they would be happy to come out and talk to you, to talk to your staff, to help your staff find a good marketplace program for them that is affordable, and oftentimes it's very close to free. So depending on how much your people make and what size of their family they are, you want to maybe employ the help of a navigator to help them access healthcare benefits. There's also a few other things inside of the toolkit that can be a little perk, and one of them is my VIP program. So this is kind of like the old entertainment books, the coupon books, that I used to buy them for my son's football team all the time. But this allows you to get cash back or to set up savings from stores that we shop all the time, whether we do it online or actually in the stores. And you can sign up for this for yourself, and you can also sign up your staff. So this is something that is really beneficial to us because it doesn't cost us anything, but it provides discounts to our people to over 25,000 merchants in the country. So very, very nice little perk. The next thing that we'll take a quick look at is staff wellness, because this is really important for people too. And if we can help them enjoy their job more, be at peace. It's a very stressful environment that we work on, especially this time of year when we have COVID and RSV and flu and everything else going on. Making sure that we're giving them their wellness a priority in our mind share can help them understand how much we value their presence in our center. So just going down the line, we have some nice dental benefits that are available to you either as an individual or you can enroll as an employer, and you can click on the summary of benefits and see if you wanted to have a high PPO, you'd see a monthly premium of $53, but a low PPO would give you something. I'm sorry, the premium is lower, but the deductible is higher for $37. And this is something that you can either pay for yourself if you can, or you can just pass that plan along to your employee. We also have docs by phone and telemedicine, and this is also very, very inexpensive. I want to say that it's under $10 a month per person for your staff. And this is an app that they can access from their phone. And it also is something where they'll go in and they'll start talking about their symptoms, and there'll be a little survey or questionnaire type thing that they'll go through, and then a doctor will come on the screen and look at their eye and say, yep, it's pink eye, here's a prescription or whatever. But they're able to get some general care information for this type of general care, this type of pediatric care. And there's also some teletherapy available in here as well that will help with these conditions and more. We also have vision benefits available through CCA for Social Good, who they are the organization that creates this platform for every state in the country. We customize it, AZOIC customizes it to Arizona. But to give you an idea of the costs and benefits here, we could give vision insurance to our employees for $6.94, or they could maybe pick up the other $11 and get vision insurance for their entire family. Going back to compensation and benefits, there's also a teacher discount program where this is really just to help us make ID cards for them, so it proves that they work at a school. And there's many retailers that offer teacher discounts, and here's a list of just a few of them that you could hand out to your staff as you're giving them their new ID cards. They also are completely customizable, and they work with Avery labels, so it makes it super easy for you to download the template, add your logo, put their picture on it, and make them an ID card. Sometimes our biggest issue is finding people, and the AZToolkit Job Bank is a wonderful resource for that. When you post here, it is free, which is wonderful, and it posts automatically to 8 different job boards with just that one post. So it would go to Indeed, it would go to LinkedIn, and all of these other job boards. It also shows up in Google. So if somebody is searching an early childhood lead teacher position, your ad will show up there. There's templates in there that are really, really phenomenal. My experience is maybe even a little too much because it's so detailed in the job description that it could almost scare people away. So use your best judgment on that when deciding on what template to use. The other nice thing about it is it's got a full portal, if you will, where you can receive your applications no matter which job site it comes in from, and you can manage the entire application and hiring process from right inside the platform. There's FAQs here. There is a way, this button will help you register, and then this one to manage your account will take you right to your portal to go forward. So instead of having to copy and paste on all those different job boards, you can just do it one time in one place. Something that we don't love in early childhood, because we are people, is things relating to discipline and termination. This is an area that we want to be very, very careful of, because there's ways to do it and there's ways that are illegal to do that. So we want to make sure that we are very careful in how we do it. And we can download this guide in either English and Spanish. We can also download the warning notice in English and Spanish. So I would encourage you not to terminate somebody for a first-time offense unless a child is hurt or there's some major neglect or abuse of some nature. But generally, you want to make sure people get warning notices in a written form a few times before they're terminated. But let's take a quick look at the discipline guide. So this is best practices. Every resource that you can find on AZToolkit that comes from CCA has been vetted by their legal department. So you can have faith that if you follow this regimen, that you will be in compliance with labor laws. So they're recommending that we're going to start with step 1, which is just a verbal notice, like, hey, that's not how we do things here. This is what we'd like to see. This is why. Always teach. Don't just reprimand, but we want to be teaching them why this is best practice to do it our way instead of what you just noticed them doing. If you catch them doing it again, now we're going to start with the written notice. They could get a second written notice, and by the third time, it's ready for termination. This will go through how to do the verbal counseling, how we might want to approach the written warning notice. They're recommending that it always is, at least if it's not an official form, that you have letterhead at least and that it's dated. I like to pull out the policy that is the infringement from our employee policy manual, and then I treat it more as a performance improvement plan. This is what I saw. This is the policy that it broke, and this is the performance improvement that I'd like to see as we go forward. You want to make sure if you have a performance improvement plan that it's not forever, that you have a date of when this particular plan is going to end. But you can follow all along on this through this guide, 6 pages of how to do this appropriately. The employee notice form, again, a downloadable form that you can then add your logo and customize this to your center. There are a lot of employment forms, there's tools, there's postings that are required for us to post by the Department of Labor and other organizations. So we'll want to make sure that you are aware of what those are. We should make sure that we have the right forms when employees start with us, the tax forms for the federal government, make sure that they are eligible to work in America. We have to go through E-Verify. We also go through our own fingerprint clearance card background check process here in Arizona. There are workplace posters that need to be up someplace very visible in your center. And we can also see the types of licensing requirements that are necessary for child care workforce in Arizona specifically. Moving forward with the equal employment opportunity. This applies to just about everybody. I will say that I am the director of a faith-based center. I think I'm allowed to discriminate a little bit. I rarely ever do. In fact, I can't think of a time that I ever have, because I like it when people look and act differently, because our children look and act differently. So it's nice that they're represented, and that they see people with various skin tones and various accents, and to make it just as dynamic of a workforce as I can. So here you'll find out what you need to know, what's prohibited, don't do these things, what are the different types of discrimination, just to be aware of them, and what are the EEOC required posters. So this will tell you all about that, and also show you how to get them for free so that you can post them in your center. The Fair Labor Standards Act is a world in and of itself. This is something that we want to be very careful of. There's guidance for us to make sure that we are in compliance with FLSA. There's some questions that we have that are specific to childcare and preschools, and we'll take a quick look at that. A lot of this will work around, should people be salaried or should they be hourly? And are we paying them for all of their time? So teachers in K-12 are almost always salaried, because can we all imagine how much it would cost to pay somebody hourly with all of the things that teachers do at home? But you want to be careful that you're not making people salaried and then expecting them to do so much work outside of their regular workday, because that is illegal. So something that I've seen change over my 20 years is payment for the required 18 hours of professional development. If you can get that done during the job day, when people are already being paid, then you're good. You don't need to pay them any extra. But if it is something that they're doing, like what we're doing tonight, they're trying to get their 18 hours in, and they're on their own time, when they turn that certificate in, or they let you know to check the registry, those are hours that you need to be paying people for. So we want to make sure that our records are accurate, and that we are meeting minimum wage in Arizona, which, as I mentioned earlier, is going to $13.85 in January. If they are over 40 hours in any work week, regardless of what your pay period is, you will need to be paying them overtime for that. You want to make sure that you are giving them a rest period, breaks, and time for meals. So if it's meals would be 30 minutes, and maybe they can get a 15-minute break during various times of the day. I know this is hard for us, that we can barely get our lunch breaks in for staff, so those 15-minute breaks are super hard. But as long as they can make it to a bathroom if they need to, or just make it a nice place to work, that helps more with job satisfaction than necessarily labor laws. But you want to make sure that you know what the laws are regarding paying people. The other thing that we want to make sure that we are aware of is FMLA. So most of us got a crash course in this during COVID. But these are the types of situations that people are entitled to receive FMLA. So it's up to a total of 12 work weeks. So this does not say you have to pay them for when they are not working. It's to say that you have a job of equal status for when they return. And then it also will help give you some other places to go for other resources. There's also a section here for OSHA, which is all about job safety. I can tell you that in my center, I can't have an accident without having a form filled out and a solution to it. So for example, I can remember one year we had a teacher walking backwards leading her class, and she tripped on her flip-flop and fell, and actually she hit her head on the door frame and blood was everywhere, and she needed staples in her head. And after that, my director of operations came to me and said, so is the solution no flip-flops, or is the solution no walking backwards? But we needed a new policy to prevent that from ever happening again. And that kind of response to an accident on the job shows OSHA, if they were ever to come and look at us, that we care about the safety of our staff, and that when things do happen, that we take responsibility for that, and we try our best to ensure that it doesn't happen again. The next section that we'll cover is the ever important employee handbook. If you don't have one of these, I would suggest you download the employee handbook in English or in Spanish, whatever works best for your team, maybe both. And this would be the entire handbook of all of these individual policies that you see here. These are all things that should be in your handbook. Again, every single one of these can be customized to you. So if you don't like this wording, you can change it to your wording, or you can adjust the policy as you see fit. But I always find it easier to edit than to create. So the employee handbook is the complete collection of these individual policies. If you already have a handbook, you might just want to review the individual policies to see if there's something in there that you're missing that you might want to add. Again, you can cut, you can paste it into your current document, change the font, change the format so it matches everything that you currently have ongoing. Some of the things, if we just wanted to pick one, let's say electronic communication. So maybe we want to make sure that we have a policy that says something to the effect of, we don't want you texting on the job, that if you are doing anything that's related to our center that is communicating with our parents, that it's done in a format that we have access to, because if anything terrible were to ever happen or something inappropriate happens, you don't want to be subpoenaing phone records of your staff. We use ProCare, and we use the parent engagement app, so they might have it downloaded on their phone, but I can still see every communication going back and forth between the employees and the parents, which is a really great way to do it. I have a policy that says you won't be texting parents back and forth on your phone. We want to be very, very careful on social media posts, that especially that we are honoring the privacy of children and their families. So this type of electronic communication policy is super important that we have in our handbooks. Trying to see if there's anything else that might be important to you, but again, log in, look at them yourself. If you have any questions, you can always contact me too, and we can talk more about that. In addition to the employee handbook, there's a resource on here that is the employee orientation toolkit. And this is so important and so hard to do. And the reason why I say that is, generally speaking, and maybe I can only speak for myself, but we are so desperate to get people in that we want to blow through our orientation and get them in the classroom and working. But there are some things that we really should do for our new staff that will overall have an impact on their job satisfaction and help them transition into our workplace. So some things that we want to think about before we get started with a new employee is to help them transition in. So yes, we're going to do our orientation with them, but it's good that we also make a new staff announcement to the families and a welcome letter for the new staff themselves, help them set their expectations for their first day, but also take time to introduce them around to our current staff, maybe even have a mentor teacher that's going to take them under their wing. But the overall plan is that we want to be onboarding them. So we can blow through orientation in an hour, but if we just let them fend for themselves after that, there's a really good chance that they're not going to love this new job. They're going to be flailing around and feeling like they don't know what's happening. And we can certainly circumvent a lot of those feelings just by having an onboarding plan. So we can take a look at what we're considering the best practices, and then try to tailor some of these onboarding processes to our own center, and think about who are we going to get to help us develop the strategy, but more importantly, implement that strategy to make that new employee feel welcome. I always feel like in orientation, kind of like tonight, that it's so much information, there's no possible way that the new employee can retain it all. So how are we going to give them some extra support to let them know where they can go back and review that information, to know that here's somebody that you can trust, that you can ask about. It doesn't always have to get back to the boss. But some helpful things that we can do is prepare the team for meeting the new employee. Prepare the new employee by helping them know what their job is going to look like. Assigning a buddy, we talked about briefly. The mentor teacher is more what I'm talking about, especially in terms of a lead teacher. Like, here is another lead teacher in your age group that can help you get to our standards of care. Also, welcome signs and some of that nice warm fuzzy things with the coffee bar and whatever, just to make them feel welcome, is always a nice touch as well. So here are some great ideas. Again, always easier to edit than to create. So it's nice to have some resources on what those best practices are. So we have our plan for overall onboarding. This might take 90 days, this might take a year, but we could take a look at these best practices tips to help us figure out, like at the 3-month milestone, the 6-month and the 12-month, what are we hoping to see from our new employees, and what supports are we hoping to provide for them. We also want to make sure that we are planning our orientation appropriately. We all have the DHS licensing, like make sure you're covering these topics, which is again the bare minimum. So if we're thinking about, like, that gets us to the health and safety standards, but what about to our level of quality? These types of checklists can help us build our own program, our own orientation, our own onboarding, to make sure that we're getting people up to the level of professionalism that we expect in our own centers. On day 1, we have a whole section here that's making sure that we get all of the required paperwork in, that our staff orientation for day 1 is completed. We've dotted I's, we've crossed T's, and here are some basic things that we'll want to make sure that we're covering. So this is their compensation. We probably have already talked about it. The goals for this job. If there's any kind of health risks that they have or that we know that we have going around in the building, we'll want to talk about that. We might want to talk about our organizational chart, what to do with their grievance policy. If you see something that you just don't think is right, who do you go to about that? Let's talk about our performance appraisals and how we do them. Again, here's some more information about Affordable Care Act. If I can't apply a health plan for you or pay for a health plan for you, I can certainly help you access one. And then make sure that we are covering all of our bases on the regulations. Moving on to general care and communication of our new employees. We've got another checklist that we can go through with people. We'll take a quick look at that. So this is just helping us let them know what we think is important. So building those relationships with families is probably second only to building relationships with the children that's in their care. We want to make sure that they have access to any type of professional development that will help them get up to speed quicker with us. So on the toolkit, you have access to this, but through the registry, there's CCEI, and maybe there's certain things in there that as a director, you've gone through and you say, I want my staff to know to take this class and this class and this class, in addition to maybe the DES health and safety classes if they don't have those already. We can talk about the daily reports, the family communication that's going, needs to happen. What does the weekly schedule look like? What is in the family handbook that you need to be aware of? And make sure that this is something that they are familiar with and that they know about. Also, if they're working with infants, for example, you might have a completely separate other checklist that has to do with that. Of course, we're going to talk about our all of us being mandatory reporters, and if we're suspecting any kind of child abuse, but that would normally be covered in the orientation. Let's move on to health and wellness. We all talk about the children we care for, and this is doing the daily health checks and making sure that if they've got a fever, if they've got pink eye, we're sending them home. But we also want to make sure that we are talking about that with the staff too. We don't need to have anybody that is contagious in our building. But here's just some various informations about the things that are all around us right now. If they are going to be working in a classroom with diapering, what's the procedure for that? We want to make sure that they're using the right gloves for that, which may differ than our food service gloves, and talk about the different health risks. And if you see something in your class or you find out that somebody in your class has been diagnosed, what do we do in that case? Moving on to program operations and professionalism, more checklists. We definitely want to be talking about ethics with them. There's a lot of, I always tell people, like, the black and the white is super easy to know right from wrong, but there's a lot of gray areas in that happens in our classrooms. So what to do about those types of issues? I have my own hot button is gossip. I don't like that at all. I've seen it do way too much damage. However, I'm not opposed to people talking about a challenge that they're having with a child and trying to get help from other staff members, which is, I see more as collaboration. And as I tell them, you know in your heart the difference between gossiping about a child you're struggling with and collaborating with ways to teach them a new behavior or a better strategy for working through some of those challenging times. But we might want to talk about some of those ethics and confidentiality with people. And again, really, really stressing the importance of respecting the privacy of children in regards to social media. I'd like to keep all of our pictures right in our ProCare app. Nothing else is out and about in the general sphere of the internet. There's a section here also on supervision and safety. The things that we do all day, every day to make sure that we are keeping our facilities clean, that we're keeping our kids safe. And I think this active supervision is really important. And I like to tell my staff too, do you realize that if you have a cell phone in your hand and licensing walks in, you are not counted in the ratio for the moment. So make sure that you are saving that cell phone. Even if you're on ProCare and you're communicating with parents, it doesn't matter. You have got to be actively supervising children and save those communications for when there's an extra person around to keep you in ratio. I'm checking the time and it's 6:39, so we're going to be cruising down through these a little bit quicker. Luckily, I think those are the longer of our topics. We all know that we need to be doing fingerprinting. This page just helps us a little bit with what's the fastest way we can do that, because a couple years ago it changed, the rules changed from they needed to apply for a fingerprint clearance card within the first 7 days on the job to they have to have it in hand before they can start. So in some of my conversations with other directors, we've kind of decided like, oh, this is super fast. If you go to the DPS portal and you do the online application and it follows you follows through to saying, okay, now go to one of these locations to get your electronic fingerprints taken. People are getting these back in like a week, which I think is insane because I'm testing it for myself right now. But you can also go do the paper application and go to Arizona Live Scan, which is also electronic fingerprints. The benefit of that is that you know right away that your fingerprints are good. They're not going to be returned because they're smudged or I couldn't read it. You know exactly from the computer that they are going to be accepted. And they also will get there ahead of your paper application. And then this resource is just also other places within the state of Arizona that you can get fingerprints done. If you are super organized and you want to have goals for each employee, they may be professional development, or maybe you want to get into conscious discipline and you're going to make this person like our conscious discipline guru, for example. You can use this form to help set goals for various members of your team. There is an HR hotline here that is $300 a year. We actually have this at my center through our payroll service, so you might want to check that first. But if you have, if you've been questioning HR practices in the past, this might be the answer that you need, to have a hotline where you can just call and ask your questions and talk to somebody that is an expert in the field. The interview guides are very, very helpful as well. You can find on this how to do a phone screen, how to do a reference check, face-to-face interview guides for teachers, for assistant teachers. I find this super helpful. I use it all the time. And that's because I want to make sure that I'm not just chatting with somebody, that I'm asking multiple candidates the same questions. That way, when I'm thinking about it afterwards and reflecting upon the meetings, I know that I can compare the answers and they're apples to apples and not just like the feeling I had after I got done with the interview. There's also a section in here for job ads. So how do we write an ad? As we talked about earlier in the job bank, they have ads already written for you, but you might want to take a look at another one and then maybe combine a little of each, whatever works for you. So here are some templates for that. There's also templates in here for job descriptions. You want to make sure that everybody has access to their job description so that they know exactly what you expect out of them. Sometimes people don't really care about this until it's a problem, but if you give it to them at the front end of it, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble going forward. So you can find job descriptions in here for anybody in your center, whether it's a maintenance worker or a lead teacher. There are some more HR forms, policies, and templates here that are, again, fully customizable. You can find them for not only your employees, but for your board. If you have a school board, for different areas of your business, whether it's volunteers, your classroom, different ones that would go out to your family, some financial forms. The health ones are so important, whether it's what we have, our cleaning checklist that we have posted in the classrooms, or a well child visit tracker, the staff orientation checklist. All this you can find in here. Here are the HR ones, safety, and then we get into policies, again, for your board, for business, for classroom, for family. There's health, there's HR. Look at how many there are. It's ridiculous. But I can tell you, every time I even think I need something like this, I come here first to see what is available. So I don't make myself crazy trying to create something new. Going back, that jumped us out of becoming an HR expert. So let's head back into that section. As we mentioned earlier, organization charts are super helpful for your team, and here are some samples and templates that will help you map your team out, which is not only helpful for your staff, but it's helpful to give to your boss even. So for me, like whether it's my director of operations or even our senior pastor, they see people walking around and they don't know who they are. So this is something that we use just to help make that a more personal experience for everyone. Quick section on payroll compliance. This is where we do not want to make mistakes. There are rules, there are laws about when a person works and how fast you have to pay them afterwards. So if you use QuickBooks, you can pay for the little extra payroll portion of that is completely integrated into QuickBooks, and maybe your staff is small enough that you can do that by yourself. If it gets to be too big though, you might want to look at ADP or an outside source. But this section will at least help you understand the payroll basics and the terms, and here are the most common payroll challenges and what you'll need to avoid. Also, yeah, payroll 101. When is the time to seek help from somebody that knows what they're doing? How do we deal with our time tracking for small business? How do we deal with the year-end things, the W-2s and all of that? So this section is all to help you navigate those areas. The other thing that we need to really be doing that is so hard to find time for are the performance appraisals. This is only fair to give our employees a reference point for how we see them. Are they our most valuable employee? Do they need some improvement in some area? So these templates will give us a baseline of something to work with that'll help us walk through a performance appraisal. I'd like to give new people, like, this is the copy of what we'll do. I'd love to tell you that I do that mid-year and I do it at the end of the year, but I would be lying. I would like to do that. I just don't have time to do that. So if you can, that's a great way to do it. So if you bring them on board, this is what is important to us, and do a check-in mid-year and then again at the end of the year. And a lot of times this helps me think through my pay increases. So if I know I'm going to have a pool of like 3% that I'm going to be able to increase, I might split that into two and say 1.5% is going to be towards people that are doing really great this year, and another 1.5% are on people who are on a trajectory to really make my future great. They're going to be great next year or the year after because you see such potential in them. And then within that 1.5%, I might take, like, they might get 0 or 0.5 or 0.5 or 1 or 1.5, depending on how you want to do it. Are they just okay? Are they good? Or are they great? And that helps me decide the pool going forward for pay increases. Some purists would say, you really shouldn't do that. That pay should be pay and performance should be something else. So I'm not saying one way is better or worse. Just make sure that you do these, because it's really bad if a teacher gets let go, or and she doesn't realize that you didn't value her because you never told her, this is what I really want you to be, and this is what I'm seeing that you are. Also, I will tell you that in my center, I ask the teammates, the assistant and the teacher to do one on each other. So I find a really interesting dynamic. So I think I know what I know and what I see, but it's also interesting to see what their partner thinks. And you can find out a lot of interesting things. Like, one, did they just agree to give themselves all excellence and they traded it? Or do we have a problem with two people because it's both terrible and we've got a conflict we didn't even know about? Maybe we can provide some help with reconciliation there, or maybe we just need to switch that team out, trying to find our dynamic duos to have in classrooms. But this will all help you through the appraisals. Getting close to the end, workplace culture is so important. We as the leaders want to make sure that our center is a positive place to work, that people know that we value them. It's a hard job, it's a rewarding job, but it's important that the team sees us all as in it together. And the resources that you'll find in this section helps us keep that workplace culture a very positive environment. So important thing is surveys. Here you'll find conducting a workplace survey. Don't do this and try to tell by somebody's handwriting who that is, because a lot of times as the leader, that comes back on us. If it's not a positive thing, then we can't take it personally. We just need to be reflective about it and see how we can work at making it a better organization. Because when our team is engaged with us and it's us against the world and we're doing the best for early childhood and we're building brains together, they really can have a much higher morale. And when the world kind of looks at us as glorified babysitters a lot, and you know that you're building brains and your team knows that they're seeing value in building brains, what the world thinks isn't always so important. So making sure that we can beat burnout, that our morale is strong, that it's a positive place. And this last section on tapping team wisdom, I think it's important for us as leaders to recognize we don't have all the answers. And there's a lot of people we work with that have a lot of years of experience as well, or insight into their children or insight into their families that can bring a lot to the decision-making process. So trying to collect that information, that wisdom from them before we make decisions makes them feel like they're part of the decision-making process, and that makes them feel valued as well. So this is a really great place to spend some time as you're striving to become an HR expert. And then cruising all the way down to workplace safety, I think we covered this a little bit with our OSHA talk, but there is a whole section here too to help you figure out additional health and resources information. So sometimes it's the law and sometimes it's just because it's best practices, but we want to make sure that we are aware of the difference and that we're doing as much as we possibly can to make sure that our centers are safe for their not only our children, but for our staff as well. So the part in blue, these are the horizontal menu bar going across the top of the page, and then underneath it are the things that you'll find going along the left-hand side. So we talked about becoming an HR expert tonight, and then these are all of the other things that are found under successful program management. But you get to that from the reference sheets out at the bottom of the screen. No matter what page you're on, you can get to a reference sheet for centers or for family child care homes. Then I just would like to say thank you so much for your time tonight. I love talking about the toolkit. I love sharing all the resources, and if I can do anything to make your job easier, I feel like we're all in the fight together to do best things for children in our care. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment to our kids. And if you ever have any questions, you can reach me at lpauley, Pauley @azaeyc.org. And I love that comment. There is so much here. It's like Pinterest for preschools. Thank you, Kathleen. That was a great comment. We'll share that. I'll make sure I share that with the team. You guys have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you again in another webinar.